So good morning, everybody. So for those of you who know me, you know me. For those of you who don't know me, I'm sure you're going to get to know me over the next few minutes. I feel quite, I don't know whether emotional is the right word, but actually it's really been interesting listening to the speakers so far because I feel I'm learning a huge amount about this subject, but it's actually touching something in me that I didn't think it was going to do. I actually thought I was just come and listen and learn and that was fine, but it's actually touching me on a very personal and emotional level, and I don't know how you feel or whether you're feeling the same, but it's absolutely fascinating. I love it. And I'm going to give you a little bit of an insight into my life as I run through what I want to talk about. I'm also losing my voice, by the way, so I hope you forgive me for that. So I want to do this. My passion and my business is all around behavioral understanding of people, and what I want to do is I want to bust a few behavioral myths when it comes to gender, the myths that persist that women do one thing and men do another thing. And we're going to do, for expediency, we're going to do 3 myths. But before I get into this, I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. So I'm going to share a picture with you that my family do not know I am sharing with you. So do not take a picture and do not tweet it. I've got 4 sisters, right? And I grew up in the Northeast, and this is my family on the right. So that's me on the left with blonde hair when I was young. Me in the middle when I went through my Frankie Goes to Hollywood phase. I swear to God, I've tried to find that T-shirt online. I'd wear it now, right? But anyway, I grew up in the Northeast. Family, so my mum and dad, and there was 5 children, and I was the only boy. And I grew up with 4 girls, and I'm right in the middle. And it was really quite an interesting lesson for me in life because I couldn't really force a male agenda on any of them because they would probably beat me up, especially Lindsay here, this girl on the right. She is tough as nails, and she really would beat me up. And I learned a lot of things about actually living in a family of women. My dad worked away from home a lot in the oil industry, so I was surrounded for the first probably 17 years of my life predominantly with women, and I genuinely believe it has held me in good stead. And it is taking me through life, and it has allowed me to make some really important decisions, especially when equality and diversity are involved. And I had, I think, a lovely childhood. I really do, and I'm happy, and it was a happy time. I reflect back on it with great joy, and it got me thinking: was that because there was a lot of women in my life? I don't know whether my sisters would have the same view, by the way, but was it because I had these women in my life? And I started doing a bit of research, and I was going to ask this question. Does anybody know what these 4 countries have in common, apart from being Nordic? Does anybody know what they have in common? They probably have lots in common, so you're probably not going to guess, right? They top the global happiness list. They are the 4 happiest countries to live in on the planet. I've been to 3 of them, and I love these. I love them as well. But shall I tell you what else is interesting? They also top another list. They also top the list of the most equal countries on the planet. The gender pay gap in these 4 countries is the smallest out of any country in the world. The amount of women in high-powered jobs is the smallest out of any country in the world. And they're also the happiest countries in the world. Now, I'm not saying that those 2 things are linked, but it's remarkably coincidental, right? And so all of this kind of makes me think, well, actually, is this just a social structure that we've created, that we want people to think this and behave in a way? And of course it is. So I want to dive into some of the guff, some of the tosh that we kind of live with and we think is true, and let's bust some myths. Did anybody take a picture of my sisters, by the way? Okay, I'm safe. Okay, myth 1. Under pressure, women tend to be more emotional. Men tend to be calm and clear-headed. Just think about it for a second. Do you agree or disagree? Don't answer. But do you agree or disagree? Let's talk through it. Because there is a ton of evidence around this subject. And what happens is this. When men and women are placed in a situation where stress is present, where which bears out that comment, the comment I made on the slide, 2 things happen. Our heart rate increases, our cortisol levels increase, our stress hormone, and what happens is 2 very clear things. Women behave differently to men. Men become kind of really, really laser focused. So under stress, they just go blinkered. I've got to do this. I've got to get to this point. They also start taking more frequent risks in order to achieve the target that they want to get to. And I think if you just be honest with yourself and think about how you behave under stress, under pressure, you'll start to see some of these behaviors just coming out, and you realize that these are things that we all go through. Now, here's what happens to women, right? Women become more risk aware. They become more conscious of whether this thing is achievable or not, whether I'm going to fail, and their senses are heightened around risk. They also become more collaborative about how they're going to get to where they want to get to. And the interesting thing is, excuse me, they actually are prepared to accept smaller rewards. Whereas a man says, no, that's the reward I want, and I will work my hardest to get to it, women are happy to take smaller rewards. So actually the myth that women are more emotional and men are more calm and clear-headed actually isn't borne out in the evidence that you read. And there are numerous research programs that have gone on around the world that disprove this time and time and time and time again. Under pressure, women in a situation bring calmness and they bring a unique strength. Now, this myth, I'm not saying one is right or one is wrong. What I'm saying through the entirety of this conversation is actually if we can bring those two things together, you get best of breed, and therefore the outcome will be better all around for every person. Instead of saying women do this and men do that, put them together, especially on a board or especially in financial decision making, which is what we specialize in. Why would you just have a man make a decision and a woman make a decision? You should put those two things together. Does that make sense to everybody, yes? Brilliant. So I wanted to put a sound effect to this, but we couldn't find a sound effect that worked. I wanted it to go, but it didn't. But it's not true. But yet it's a myth that society is perpetuating. And there are many of these, and myth number 2, which is my favorite one, because this one is probably the most uncomfortable for people. The myth is that when it comes to investing, men are better than women at this. Now I'm going to digress slightly. So one of the areas that we specialize in is risk. And there is a view around the world that men tend to take more risks than women. But actually, when you start measuring other financial behaviors or other cognitive biases that we heard about earlier, what you find is that's not true either. Men tend to be more risky because they're more overconfident. And women tend to take less risk because they're more underconfident. So actually, there is a whole plethora of behavior that impacts how we do things. And that is borne out in this myth that men are better investors than women. So I'm going to draw on some external research. Figures on the screen, 0.3%, top left-hand side. Research carried out by Fidelity amongst their millions of customers in the US, and they found that on average, women outperform men by 0.3%. It's not a massive amount, but it doesn't matter. It's an outperformance. Figure at the bottom. Companies who track online performance and online interactions show that for the last 3 years, women have outperformed men. And the one on the right-hand side is one of the reasons why men tend to most of the time underperform. Men trade 45% more times than women do. So when the markets are moving up or down, men will trade 45% more times than a woman does. And the research has shown that that has an impact on eroding value. So let me talk about stuff that we do, just to kind of back this up. Action bias, by the way, is when you feel like you just need to do something, whether it's right or wrong, you feel like you need to act. And this is research that we carry out in the UK and the US, and we do this annually. And I just want to share this with you. We asked a question, in the market downturn of 2007, 2009, what did you do? And these are people who were invested during that period of time, and we offered them just the ability to tell us what they did. On the left-hand side, women in red, men in white, I tried to avoid further losses by taking action. You can see that 13% of men did that and 9% of women. But on the right-hand side, I tried to make more money. 18% of our respondents said, I tried to do something in a positive way, but less women compared to men again. And this is all about how men just feel like they have to do something, whereas women take more contingencies, they become more risk alert, and they start to weigh up what's going on. And then my final bit on this particular myth, and I mentioned this in regard to risk-taking, is these are the confidence bands of UK and US investors. And if you look on the left-hand side, you'll find that there's a higher percentage of women when it comes to underconfidence, and on the right, a higher degree of men when it comes to overconfidence. And actually, if you think about what the evidence is showing you, there is no reason for women, in this particular instance, to be less underconfident than men. And actually, men may be able to learn a little bit about being too overconfident and rein it in a little bit to get better outcomes all round. Confidence is a fascinating subject, by the way. It is so multifaceted, incredibly deep. And I can have a conversation with you over lunch, but actually there's much more about, especially around risk-taking, financial decision-making, and actually decisions in life which are completely influenced by confidence, or overconfidence, or underconfidence. Last time I'm going to ask this, is everybody still okay? Yes? Cool. Busted. We should have got the band Busted to come and play every time that come up and sing the word. And then the final one. I love this one. Women are more intuitive than men. And they tend to make decisions more with their gut than with the brain. Okay, we've already heard this, right, from the first session. But I want to just talk about this a little bit. That's a person. And what happens is this. So this is going further into what we heard earlier. When we all make decisions, male or female, we do it through two ways. It's what's called System 1 and System 2 thinking. If you know about Danny Kahneman, it's his work. And what happens is we do System 1 or System 2. We either make decisions with our head, analytical, hard work, really quite labor-intensive, and we don't do this a lot because it is absolutely physically knackering to do it, right? And you'll know this yourselves when you've had to really think hard and long about something, it really, really hurts. But most of the time what happens is we make decisions with our gut, intuition, what feels right. And that gets us through life, and it's absolutely fine. You don't need to ponder and go through a whole raft of cognitive process to decide whether you want a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or where you want to go on holiday this year. We don't do it. We just make intuitive decisions. And that's absolutely fine, right? But the problem is with financial decisions, you shouldn't be making them with your gut. You should be making them with your head. And what happens, and this is pertinent to the UK population, what you find is that majority of people, when they're making decisions, male or female, and there's hardly any difference, predominantly make decisions with their gut. 66% of people make decisions, financial decisions, with how it feels. Only 9% of people make those decisions on any form of analytical reasoning. This, out of all the research we've carried out, was one of the scariest statistics, that people are making financial decisions that have an impact on their life based on how the information they are reading makes them feel, as opposed to any analytical or real understanding of the data that's in front of them. And when you start to rip this apart and look at it demographically, there is hardly any difference between males and females. When you start ripping apart our data anyway, there's hardly any difference between males and females. What is really obvious amongst it is human behavior. And it is not gender specific at all. We all behave in a very specific way. So actually, it's another myth that's busted. We as people are people, and the way we behave financially isn't about whether you're a man or a woman. And actually, if we can just join forces, if we can start making decisions by using the strengths of females and the strengths of males, putting those two things together, I think the outcomes for everybody will be much greater. And I was going to end on that, but I'm not going to. I'm going to show a little insight. Michelle's opening. My brain is constantly on the go. It's a real problem for me. And I was finishing this presentation, and I looked at the logo, this one here, Unlock the Value and Diversity logo. And it was a little bit like a scene from A Simple Mind. I was looking at the letters, and I was thinking, oh, isn't that funny? If you take the from the first word, and then versity from the back end, it's university. I wonder what other words are in there. So God's honest truth, an hour, right? With a pen going, oh, you could do that, move that there, and that could do that. But I found something really quite interesting, right? I think. I want to just play it to you. I had to make it as a video so it worked properly. So that's the logo, right? You're all doing it now, aren't you? What words can you see? Duty. You can't see the word that really stood out to me. Who said it? Love. Oh. They're my words after all that. What an anticlimax. But actually, universal duty to actually be inclusive and to be and to be diverse. We have a universal ethic. It's an ethic we should just live. And of course, actually, what we end up getting from this is a universal love. And wouldn't that be a better world to live in, I think? Thank you for listening. Leave it there.